for guys that say, hey, how do I start this? That's my answer. Get more grounded, start to get your clarity and lead, offer your leadership more, and then build connection and emotional safety for her.
Welcome to Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Maxed Out Man podcast. Today I'm going to be here with GS Youngblood. Love that name, by the way. That's like a very like old Western
There you go.
type. You're like sheriff of some small town in an old Western. But
That's right.
yeah, before I get started, we're going to talk about GS and his approach to coaching and courses and masculinity and all that today. But one of the cool things about this space is that we all have different kind of methodologies, approaches, personalities. And so if you guys are wanting to check him out, go to gsyoungblood.com. I would also encourage you to check out maxedoutman.com. I do coaching as well, courses, and we've got all sorts of different things going. So there are a lot of resources out there to help you. So hope you guys will enjoy this episode. GS shows men how to repair their relationships by living from their masculine core. He is the author of The Masculine in Relationship and the Art of Embodiment for Men, combined 50,000 copies sold. Nice job on that. And he's a highly sought after men's coach. He teaches the Masculine Blueprint, which is his model of modern masculinity that fits in our modern world without being watered down. He also runs his flagship relationship repair bootcamp program to help men go deeper into the principles of the books. And as I said, go to gsyoungblood.com for more information. GS, thank you, man, for coming. I appreciate it. And I know we had a little bit of a difficulty kind of getting things scheduled, so I appreciate your patience on that. I'm just about well. So if you hear a little gravel in my voice, that's kind of what's still going on. But yeah, so I appreciate you coming. Talk to me about your backstory. That's one of the things I love getting on here, to kind of set the stage for who we're talking to, how you got here, what your path is. You look to be a little bit younger than me, but not by much. And so we're kind of in that age range where we've had a few years to do a lot of different things.
And fuck up a lot of different things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure that a lot of people share this trait who are in this coaching realm or growth path realm, that we've had some tragedy or relational catastrophe. And so for me, it was a divorce about 15 years ago. And by the end of that marriage, I'd allowed myself to become relatively emasculated. It was really just trying to keep the peace. And little did I know at the time that was really actually making it worse. It was part of the problem because of the tendency to be a pleaser that a lot of guys fall into. Well, I fell into that too back then because I was married to a very strong woman, and I didn't know how to be with a strong woman. So from that phase of my life, which was a hard one, provided the fuel for me to go on what's now been a 16 plus year journey into these dynamics of masculine, feminine, and the polarity that results from them in relationship. And I've been on two tracks. One is a lot of studying with a lot of well-known teachers and really on my own growth path and a learning phase, but also in an applied phase, because I've been in a long-term relationship with a woman who's got a really strong feminine and a really strong masculine at the same time. So if I'm not filling that vacuum in the masculine pole, which is what I would choose to, then she's quite capable of doing that.
Right.
So, it's when you're in a long-term relationship, you have the opportunity to see what creates more connection and more solidity and more satisfaction for both people and what doesn't. And so it's been both of those tracks I've been able to grow myself. And then as that morphed into me observing what I would consider to be sort of common universal principles of relationship and polarity in relationship, I was able to coalesce that into the books that I've written and all the other things that I've put out in the world. So yeah, Kevin, failure was my fuel along this 16-year journey that I've been on so far.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, all of us have those kind of stories, right, throughout our lives. And if hopefully we do what you're doing, which is you pivoted, you learn and continue to grow and learn along the way. I have so many questions. I want to start, just and like I said before we get started, like these are a lot of times for my own edification, and I'm glad people listen along. I've told this story on the podcast before, but just in context of what we're talking about. My wife went from a stay-at-home mom, homemaker, to welder, off-road racer, car builder, all of these things, right? So, and as part of that, we had the opportunity to be a part of all female tradeswomen activities, right? So these are like the badass females that are in a male dominated field. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm setting up for this question, but most of the time these women are like, they almost put on this bravado, this fake masculine energy. But at their core, Michelle and I, we had an opportunity to do this together. And so they saw us as this married couple, and they saw our dynamic. And more than one of them had said, yeah, I'm this kind of badass woman, but I would love to be taken care of the way that, or treated the way that Kevin treats you. Yeah. Is that kind of the dynamic that you see now? And really, I feel like that we're in this very confused, what the hell even is masculinity stage?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I've got a lot of things to say about that. I remember my ex, she once said to me, she's like, I can do all these things, and meaning all this shit that I was abdicating to her because I was off working, thinking that that's all I needed to do in a relationship. But she's like, I can do all these things. I just don't want to have to all the time. And that was, I didn't quite get the profundity of it then, but certainly now it strikes me like, yeah, I think men who are with very capable women, they see them and like, well, she's a big girl. She can handle all this stuff. And you just sort of let her take the lead on a lot of things. And little do you realize that she can do that, but she doesn't want to have to do that all the time. And I think that's a little bit what you're referring to. And I want to say right out of the gate, there's no shoulds here. It's like, there's not a woman should be doing this or a feminine being should be. It's what you choose. So really, what are we talking about? We're talking about kind of a context of a man who wants to be in his masculine, who's with a woman who's open to surrendering into her feminine and into his lead. And then anybody beyond that can adapt what we're talking about to their own unique situation. But yeah, how nice for the women in our world for us to just step up and be like, baby, I got this. Just get on my ride. I got this. And she can go, okay, I'll follow you. And it is absolutely a real relief. And, for guys who, like, they're constantly kind of banging heads with their woman, it's probably because she's still in her masculine energy a lot. And you've done nothing to convince her or persuade her or encourage her to surrender into your competent lead, either because you're not leading or your lead isn't very good. I mean, there's a lot of incompetent ways to lead. So one of the things that David Data always said, and it's always struck me, is that your masculine leadership is a gift to her. It's not your birthright. It's not what you should be doing. It's the gift that you choose to give so that she can just relax back into her feminine nature, which is what you want, because that's when she's in her feminine, that's when all the playful, delightful, lighter parts of her are allowed to come out, when she can relax. When she's thinking, when she's having to take care of everything, she's not relaxing back into that. You're not getting that version of her that was like when you just met, which we all look back with fond memories of. So your leadership is a gift. I think that's probably the way that I'll tie that all together. Your leadership is a gift to her. So men, ask yourselves, in what ways am I gifting my leadership from a day-to-day basis? In what ways are you doing that?
How does that dynamic look? I mean, I alluded it to a little bit in my question, but I feel like we're in a place right now where women don't really know how to be women, or if it's okay to be a traditional, what do they call it now? Trad wives or something like that on TikTok, right?
Yeah, I've heard
that. And then men also don't really know how to be men, and if it's okay to be a traditional man. Like I would consider myself the traditional, kind of conservative, old school, that kind of thing, with, a very healthy dose of servant leadership understanding my feminine energy, all of those things. Not saying I'm perfect by any means, but I seem to be more moderate. But I feel like what we see now is like, hey, I want to be a strong leader in my family and for my wife, but she doesn't know how to be led. I don't really know how to lead in a way that supports her strengths. You know, how does that work? And do you agree with that? Is that kind of what you're seeing?
Okay, that was a big question.
Yeah, huge, right.
There's a lot to that. Gosh, I don't even know where even to start with that. I want to say something about this notion of trad wife, because I've heard that phrase too.
Yeah.
And I'll just give my opinion. Everybody else got their opinion too, I'm sure. There's no, again, I guess I said this before, there's no shoulds. If I use the phrase trad wife, which I don't really, but if I did, there's nothing in there that says somebody's supposed to be a certain way. That's somebody that chooses to be that. I mean, there was that whole controversy with the kicker from the Chiefs and the things he was saying in that speech. I didn't listen to the speech, but what I hoped he said was like, if that's what you choose, then that's beautiful. Yeah. Be a beautiful family structure. And no one's telling you that you have to do that or forced to do that. And I think that's the orientation I take, is like, we're talking about people that choose to be in certain roles, not that they're supposed to be in those certain roles. What I would say for a man who wants to lead more, and he finds that his wife's not really kind of playing along or is open to his leadership, it's because your lead's not good enough, and it hasn't been. You've trained her that you're not going to step up competently. You've trained her that she can't trust you. It's on you. It's not about her and her being recalcitrant. Now, there might be some resistance over there, but man, just before you throw, it's like glass houses. Before you start complaining about how somebody else is being, take care of your own house first. And what that means here is you got to learn how to lead more competently. If you want to lead, you got to lead competently. And then over time, she'll trust you. The feminine we all know this, the feminine is more vulnerable in the world. I don't mean emotionally vulnerable. I mean sort of physically vulnerable. Mm-hmm. We all know that. So she's going to trust slower than a man might trust somebody. So you got to earn it over time. So if you're not leading the way you want, and you feel like she's not open to it, then you've got to look at your lead and how can you be a better leader, be a more attuned leader. When we talk about leadership, we don't mean domineering or it's my way or the highway, like all of our dads were back in the day, That's not really going to fly as much these days. What we're talking about is you as a man having inner clarity about what the moment calls for. What is it that I need, and what are my boundaries, and what are my preferences? Also, I'm attuned enough to my woman that I know what she needs. I know her needs, I know her boundaries, I know her preferences. So I can roll that into my leadership so that when I say, baby, I think this is what we ought to do, she's like, most cases, she'd be like, okay, that works for me. You've taken into account what I want. So that notion of attunement is a huge part of leadership, that if you're not attuned to your constituents, so to speak, you're not going to be a very good leader. You're going to be a domineering asshole. So anyway, those are some of the thoughts that come up around like men who are wondering how they can lead more and be more of a leader in their relationship.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, and I can't remember then, and I just saw that kicker speech briefly, but I like what you said about that, in that, and this is what's so crazy about what's going on in our world right now, and this isn't a political statement. It's like, dude, it should be okay for him to say that that's okay, right? The fact that he points out that if someone chooses a particular path as a woman or as a man, and he's just completely destroyed, just makes, it's a sad place. And I like the way that, I'm just pointing out that I like the way that you said that. What did those, and I think, that creates this kind of dichotomy of like, can I be a strong leader? Am I not a strong leader? And how that works, and how my wife or, woman might be receptive to that. What does that kind of leadership look like? Like, what if you said, okay, if you're going to coach a man to say, okay, this is what I see from your challenges as a leader, and this is what I think you ought to model. What does that model look like?
Yeah, you talked about leadership. I'm just going to expand that out kind of into the holistic masculine. That's how I like
for sure.
And my answer to that question really is the masculine blueprint, which you know from the book. It's for the listeners who haven't read the book, it's the framework that I offer. And I'll tell you where that came from. Obviously there's all this raging in pop culture and society, like what is masculinity, and so many people are associating masculinity with toxic masculinity and thinking that's the only form of masculinity, which is absurd, of course.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what is the essence when we talk about masculinity? Everybody has their own definition of what it is. We're not actually talking about the same thing all the time. What is the essence of it that any man can embody? Not just the purview of the guy that's 6'2" and has got a square jaw and he's kind of domineering in his personality naturally. What about the guy that's like 5'5" and he's a good man and he's got some strength to him, but he's also not an imposing. I wanted everybody to participate. So that's what the blueprint was. It's like, this is my offering of what I think modern masculine is. And in my opinion, it doesn't water down. It's not about being kind of lukewarm of a leader and watering the leadership down, but it's about getting to the essence of what a masculine being looks like in the world. And maybe we should jump into that, Kevin.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So what we're talking about is like, what's the definition of a modern masculine? And so the masculine blueprint has 3 elements. And the first is respond versus react. And in other words, what we're talking about is that quality of getting grounded. So this is a guy that's got a very grounded and settled nervous system. And, in contrast to somebody who's instantly defensive anytime anybody challenges what he says or his self-image of himself or has some complaint. This man, with that grounded nervous system, he can kind of rest in a little bit of stillness and spaciousness, so that within that spaciousness, he can actually choose how he's going to be from moment to moment, rather than kind of what a lot of us do when we get triggered is we operate out of our habituation, out of our wounding, out of our script, and that thing that we always say, and have that same fight that we always have. This is in contrast to that, a man who's actually, he's taking in the world and then has the space to choose moment to moment how he's going to be. And you have a real felt sense of somebody who embodies this quality. Getting grounded in this context is really the foundation of all masculinity, because you need to be choiceful. Life's going to throw all kinds of things at you, and so you need to be very choiceful in how you're going to react. So that's the first element of the blueprint, which is respond versus react.
It's almost like instead of having a trigger, you have a long fuse, right? Because a trigger is instant. Mm-hmm. And having, because the fuse, I was just in my mind, I'm trying to kind of put an analogy together. And it seems like having that fuse gives you time to think through it, make the right choices versus just pulling the trigger. And
exactly.
Like we all do, right?
It's like that pretty famous quote from Viktor Frankl, which I did cite in the book, in the space between stimulus and response is what he talks about. Yeah. So we want to open up that gap between stimulus and response. It's a beautiful thing when you see somebody who's like that, because you feel everything feels more real, more trustable when somebody's pausing and considering. So I work with men a lot. I do a lot of it. We come through the path of the physical and through doing a lot of embodiment work. And I'm constantly talking about embodiment. My workshops are almost, not almost all, but a big part of the workshops I give, we're actually doing embodiment work so that we can attack these things down at the nervous system level rather than up here, because anything you learn cognitively kind of flies out the window when you get all triggered and when she's all fired up and you're having a fight or whatever.
Can you explain embodiment, just what that process looks like? Because it's not, I'm familiar with the concept, but not everybody may be.
Yeah. Short version is most of the time you go through the world and your awareness rests in your thinking mind. And your thoughts and your projections and your made up shit and your stories that you make up to kind of understand the world around you and the weird behavior of people around you. So you live in a thought created world, and that thoughts are only about the future or about the past. So not only are you in a thought created world, but you're not even like here right now. You're sort of anticipating the future or remembering or ruminating on something that already happened. So what we want to do with embodiment is we want to give you practices that help you take some of that awareness, not all of it, but just some portion of that awareness, and rest in the physicality of your body, some identified physical sensation. When you do that, what you're going to find is, because the sensation in your body only happens in the now. It's experienced. So when you have some awareness on that, it actually pulls you into the now and kind of pushes away the thoughts and that thought world that's around you. And so basically what that means is you're going to be a little less triggered or a lot less triggered. You're going to be a fair amount more present here with what's actually happening. Because think about it. Think about the last huge fight you had with your woman, like the real, like just blowout fight. Like it's your nervous system might as well be getting attacked by a tiger. You're in that much of a state of heightened awareness. But that's not real. You're not in any real threat. If you were a fly on the wall watching this fight, you'd be like, why is that guy so jacked up? Because there's no threat. I mean, yeah, his woman's upset, but she's not attacking him.
Right.
But the nervous system kind of doesn't know the difference between mortal danger and emotional danger. And so we get confused. So when you're more here now with what's actually happening, you realize that, the threat is not as big. You're aware that your baby is hurting rather than kind of projecting on her that she's an intractable monster that must be gotten away from. So embodiment does all these things to you. And as evidence, I just put up my own experience, over the last 10 years when I've probably more than 10, but really have thrown myself deeply into my embodiment practice. I've changed. My nervous system's changed. My clients are consistently telling me, the ones that have a regular practice that I teach them, consistently telling me that it's making them calmer, less reactive, more present. It's powerful work. It's just not an easy fix. It takes time and a lot of practice, just like training for a marathon would be.
Right. Yeah. And so you went through the first one and then the second aspect of it.
Yeah. So once you get grounded, now you can step into the leadership aspect. So the second element of the blueprint is provide structure. And so this is the quality of man that first and foremost has inner clarity. Like inside himself, he knows what he needs. I think I said this before, what he wants and needs, what his boundaries are, what works, what doesn't. And he's also attuned to those who are important to him. It's not just about what he wants. That's being a narcissist. We don't want to do that. But you're attuned to those you love. So your woman. Attunement really is, I say this a lot, that attunement is the difference between, domineering asshole and, a benevolent leader in the relationship. And so I'm teaching men to really be attuned to their woman, to know her well, not only over the long arc, but also in this moment. Who is she in this moment? Because the feminine changes so rapidly. And then from that clarity, then expressed as structure, how we're going to do things, or direction, what we're going to do. And I say this over and over. It's not about you. It's not about control. It doesn't even matter if you make the decision. You have to be the guy that makes sure a decision gets made, whether you make it or you frame it so that she can step in and maybe it's her decision to make, but you're going to frame it and make sure there's forward movement rather than just letting these things stay open loop forever with the resultant impact on your life. That's a leader right there. I think that's the modern definition of a leader, is he's really harnessing what the collective good is and then bringing forth what he thinks is the right direction or structure. Sometimes that's being inclusive, benevolent. Sometimes it's like, we're doing this. And it's your wisdom that tells you where to be. If you come in too heavy-handed on something that's not quite right for that fierce clarity, then you're going to fail. If you come in a little watery and too democratic on something that needs your cutting clarity, then you're going to fail. So it's the wisdom to know where to be on that spectrum of inclusiveness versus directiveness. That's super, super important in this realm.
Yeah, I don't remember what the quote is, but specifically, but Reagan is famous for a quote of saying, when I need to make a decision, I don't ask a bunch of people's opinions. I make the decision. That's kind of the essence of it. Yeah. I have a question and follow up to that in terms of like how I kind of see things and whether or not this is the right approach, the wrong approach. I know you said there's no shoulds, right? But I typically work my life around ensuring that I provide the best leadership and care for my wife. Right. Like almost never is it in a hugely self-sacrificial way or a weak way, but like my main objective is to make sure she's happy or not happy, but content and taken care of and those kind of things. Right. Yeah. Safe. Like, is that the right approach? Or because I know in some ways, like you were saying, you can, if you don't approach that in the right energy, you can emasculate yourself. Really.
Oh, yeah. It's not the what you do, it's the energy behind what you do. So if you're, you're kind of breathless, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, right.
What do I do? But your motivation is really to avoid her displeasure. That's emasculating. That's nice guy pleaser. If your motivation is not to avoid displeasure, but to create satisfaction in her life and create ease and pleasure for her, then that's totally different. It might be the same act, like getting her flowers. Like if it comes out of I'm in trouble, I gotta, do something. She's gonna feel that the way that you hand her the flowers and the energy that you have, because when you're in the needy phase, you're gonna be riveted on her, looking for signs of pleasure or displeasure with you as you hand her those flowers. When you're in that, and she'll feel that. Women are quite good at that. Whereas if you're like, I know my baby loves flowers, and I don't even it's not even her birthday. I haven't bought them for her in a while. I actually bought my woman some flowers the other day. Kind of was for no reason other than I hadn't bought her flowers in a while. And when you hand them to her, she's just going to feel the energy. You're not waiting for some sign. So this is just an example, but it's the energy with which you do things. So yeah, for you to say, you know what? When I come to the end of my days, I want people to judge me. Did I take care of my wife? She's going to look at me and go, God, you gave me such a beautiful life. If that's your motivation, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And then also for me, what I have had to learn over time, because she was like stay-at-home mom. She grew up with a pretty domineering dad in terms of not domineering, but just very on the other side of the continuum for traditional. Like if she was ever sad or upset or, had any kind of problems, it's because you're a girl, right? Like basically weaponized her emotions and also treated her like girls are dumb, right? Like girls are incapable.
Yeah.
And so she defaulted to that kind of mentality a little bit throughout our relationship. So the example we give is like, if I saw my wife walking across the house with a hammer, like I'm going to be like, where are you going with that? And what are you doing? Right. Like that was, and so I had to transition to be like, well, she must have a good reason for doing that.
Yeah.
And she'll tell me if she needs help. Right.
Yeah.
And that like we literally took apart her Jeep and put it back together. And she did probably 80% of the work. Yeah. I'm a hot rod guy. I started building cars when I was 15 and all this stuff. So I had the knowledge, but the way I taught her is, hey, here, let me show you how to do this. Then you go do it. If you screw it up, you have to redo it. We just rebuilt. We're building a huge shop, like a garage type thing. I taught her how to frame the same way. But she made the mistake. But then I transitioned from, hey, let me make sure that you're not being dumb, to, I know that you're smart enough and capable enough to do anything. Let me help you along that path. Yeah. And that seems to have, and that's probably been the last 10 years, and it's made a huge difference in our relationship for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it sounds like it was actually very therapeutic for you to give her the reins, unlike her father did. And your point was like this, but can I just zoom it out a little bit? As men, we're often up against the ghost of her father. Mm-hmm. And the father is kind of in quotes, because the father could have been the actual father or a brother or lovers, that really wounded her in certain ways. And, we can stay in the mode of like, where the hell are you going with that hammer? Where we're kind of,
right.
We're not opening our eyes to the fact that she might be wounded in a certain way. And so we just react, because we disagree with her behavior, but we're not seeing past it to the wound that we could actually, if we could be with that, you can actually heal your woman and heal as I call it, the ghost of her father. But you got to be bigger than that. Bigger than whatever wound that manifests in the present day. So it sounds like a beautiful example of that, where you actually probably really healed her a lot from that wounding from her father. I love that example.
Yeah, and we worked on it together, and it's a constant thing. But it's so interesting to me because my original motivation is that I want to care for her and and quote unquote make sure that she's able to accomplish what she's trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And her dad was one of these guys that like, excuse me, took things away from her because she didn't feel confident, right?
Yeah.
And so I was not necessarily doing that, but on occasion I would. And so like I was actually doing it from a place of love, but from a totally screwed up place, right? Like I was completely, telling her that she was incapable. I've been super blessed to be able to feed into the lives of tons of men from all around the world and all walks of life. And I'm very excited to announce that I do have a couple of spots available right now. If you're interested in working with me, and we can talk about pretty much anything: marriage, business, fitness, parenting, being a dad, dogs, cars, whatever you want to talk about, I'm available to do that. We want to focus on the things that may be most beneficial to you and some things that you may not even know would be beneficial to you. You've listened to the podcast, you kind of know my style. If you are interested in working with me, I want to try to make it as simple as possible, but I also want to make sure we're a good fit. Send an email to coaching@maxedoutman.com and just give me 2 pieces of information: why you would like to work with me and what that might mean for you, what things you would hope to accomplish by meeting with me. That'll kick off the process. I'll reach back out to you. We can jump on a call and see whether or not it would be a good fit. So go to maxedoutman.com, coaching@maxedoutman.com. Send me an email with those 2 pieces of information, and we'll see if it's a good fit. And I hope it is, and I hope that we can actually connect.
Right. Yeah.
Of doing
this is what I mean. We're talking about how to be with strong women. So strong women are going to be more apt to be like, don't treat me like a baby. Let me do some of this. And so I love your example. This is what falls into the category of taking care of your woman. And I actually have a whole section on this in one of my online courses. And it's not something I've heard a lot of traditional men's teachers talk about a lot. Like, how do you actually take care of your woman and her heart and her body and her well-being? And it's something I think men could get a lot better at.
Yeah, 100%. I was just thinking, we have our kids are gone, so it's easier, but we have a room that we do. She gets a weekly massage, and not like, hey, this is a 3-minute massage on the way to something else. It's like, this is a legit massage. And so that's one of the ways that I care for her. We did this weekend, and I had her wear an eye mask and look, there's no end result here that we're trying to get to. And, just really and back to your point about being in the moment. And she actually cried a little bit because she was just able to be in that moment. But for me, that's one of those things, like, I specifically learned how to give an actual real therapeutic massage. And we have this joke at the, when we're done with the massage, I'm like, would you like to participate in our additional services? And sometimes it's yes, and more times than not it's yes, but sometimes it's not. But what I tried to do is create an environment in that way that it's not expectation. Like, I'm not giving to get.
Yeah.
And that's something that's made a huge difference for us.
Yeah, I think that ties into the story about the flowers and giving and the energy with which, it's like giving to get. There's that expectation, and they can feel you searching them for that, reciprocity. So give without expectation of reciprocity, and it'll come back to you many times over.
Yeah.
It just may not be in that particular moment.
Right. And it's, it is that self-sacrificial giving, because if you're giving with the expectation of getting, then you're not really giving. This is a transaction.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about your giving in terms of transaction, whether it be your words, your actions, your thoughts, all of that, making it transactional, I think just diminishes it completely.
Totally. Yeah. Couldn't agree with you more.
So are you finding, let's help the men that are listening to this, how do they begin to have these conversations with their woman to even just open this up, right? Like, to be able to understand, because I think men are like, I don't even know where to start. Like, I know my wife or, girlfriend is really strong, and I tend to be pretty weak in the relationship. I know that that's out of balance. How do I find out where she's at? How do we have these because it all starts with conversations in terms of the interactions, I'm assuming.
Well, no.
Okay.
And this is, I think, what we're talking about is it's not, you don't need her to participate
Oh,
or
okay.
do something different. What you got to work on yourself. So it's not, I don't say it starts with a conversation. I say it starts with doing the work on yourself and bringing something different. You will evoke something, a different way of being in her by your own way of being. And I think that's the powerful thing about the masculine is their way of being tends to be a reaction to our way of being. And we could go into why that is, but let's take it as a given for now. So I would say don't open up a conversation about how to fix the relationship, or certainly not how to be more masculine or be more of a leader. Like, it's kind of like Fight Club. Don't talk about being a leader with your woman because it'll come off poorly. Trust me. Just do it. And so here, what do? Number one, start getting more grounded so you're less reactive when she gets fired up. That's number one. She'll feel that immediately. The minute that you have 20% more capacity for her upset, and you kind of just stay with it that much longer without defending or explaining or talking her out of it or trying to fix it, it's going to pay. I mean, she's going to feel that immediately. So get grounded, guys. And then start to look at the places in your life where you abdicate. Start to look at the places where you're actually pretty good at something, and so you could lead more, and just lead. Not by control, but by invitation, but showing up and being like, you know what, baby, I think we should do this. How would that land for you? Instead of the first thing you say is, well, what do you want to do, babe? Because you know she's super opinionated, so you just go immediately to ask her. Actually have your own clarity and bring something to the party. It's kind of like when you show up for a dinner party. You don't show up empty-handed to somebody's house. You bring a bottle of wine, you bring flowers, you bring something. So show up to the party with some clarity in what you think should be done. It doesn't mean that you have to do it that way, but start with that clarity. That's what I would say to guys. And then the third element, which we didn't actually get to, so maybe we should
go ahead.
Back, but is building emotional safety and connection. And so start to build emotional connection with your woman, and create emotional safety for her. That's going to pay dividends, many times over. And so for guys that say, hey, how do I start this? That's my answer. Get more grounded. Start to get your clarity and offer your leadership more, and then build connection and emotional safety for her. Once you do that, everything's going to change. I guarantee it.
And how do we build, what's the process for building? I'm a logistics guy. What's the process for building that connection?
Yeah. The biggest complaint that women I talk to say is they don't feel heard and seen and received and understood and certainly felt.
Yeah.
So if you can just make some more space for her emotions, learn how to skillfully dance with them. And that's what I'm working on, man. I bet you're doing that kind of work as well with men. So, guys, go find a coach somewhere out there who can help you with this. That's first and foremost is really just making space for her expression and understanding the feminine expression more rather than just saying, oh, she's just being crazy. If you can see behind that, you can actually see what's going on. That's one. And then building emotional connection, a lot of it comes down to sharing of your own inner state. Most guys don't share a lot what's inside, and we feel like a rock to our women. And then when they can't feel us, they start to feel unconnected to us. Do that over time, and then they feel chronically unconnected to us. And then that's when relationships start to fray and end. So start sharing of yourself in a masculine way, not a feminine way, but in a masculine style. And then really getting to know her. Like, it's pretty common knowledge. I think most women know their men way more than the man knows her. But the feminine likes to be felt and understood and known. The feminine likes to be known. So know your woman. And that's just I work with guys on a lot of their curiosity and how to really get to know her world more. Those are the ways that you build emotional connection. Those are the ways that you create an emotional sense of emotional safety in her. And that is so powerful, so powerful.
Yeah, I always call it getting your PhD in your woman.
Yeah, I like that.
Because it's like I almost pride myself a little bit, and I want to know my wife as well or even better than she knows herself, because we oftentimes we don't really know ourselves as well as other people. may point certain things out. So whether that's physically, sexually, spiritually, emotionally, all of those things, like I want to be the expert on my wife. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about being attuned to her. And you know, predominantly we give the example of, you know, when your wife is mad or angry or going off on you or whatever, but my wife isn't really geared that way. My wife tends to be more, she withdraws a little bit. She's just a very soft emotional person. Like and so I have to then, soften my approach, not soften myself, but soften my approach to her, because I'm like, well, just get over it. Like, that's not, you know, that, but I do want to point out, as we have listeners, that not all women have that strong, angry, I'm going to stab you in the face kind of demeanor. But I think we tend to then also have a hard time really understanding and quote unquote dealing with, you know, just you're crying for no reason, quote unquote, no reason, right? Like that's that. And obviously there's cyclical, there's hormonal, there's, you know, environmental and all of that stuff. But I just wanted to kind of point that out a little bit as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that example of crying for no reason. Like, why are you so upset? That's such a common question that guys ask. And, you know, I'd say that guys, come on, guys, you got to know this. Your woman feels her emotions 5 times more than you do. So just like if you know, jumped into the Pacific Ocean up here in Northern California, like it's fucking cold. It's going to hit your system and you're going to feel it. You know, it's kind of like emotions for her. They hit her way more than they hit you. And so you wonder why she's crying. It's because she can't contain it. It's too much of an emotional burden for her. She actually needs you to carry some of it with her. And that could either be through your empathy, or if you're going to be not empathetic, then she's going to pound you until you start to feel her pain with her. So it's your choice which way you want to participate, but she's going to enroll you in that because it's too much for her. And if you want to be the hero for your woman, figure out how to really step in close and carry that burden with her. You're going to be her hero, because then she can regulate. You're going to be the man that regulates her, and then she can come back into relationship with you in the moment, being relational, being sexual, being loving, being able to talk about the facts, and, you know, all that comes after you achieve that emotional resonance.
Which is the connection part, right? Like we have to, I love that idea of like, all right, because I want to provide safety. I want to provide security. I want to provide that environment. And one way to do it is actually to, you know, if you imagine a cup of emotion and it's overflowing, then I have my cup, or, you know, I put my hands under that cup in order to catch that overflow and then be able to talk through it and carry some of that with her. I love that. That's really pretty.
Yeah. Good stuff, Kevin.
Well, I think that, you know, I mean, to me that, do you want to talk any about your relationship repair bootcamp, about the bootcamp and kind of what you do there?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I obviously I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, but I'm scaling that down because I'm trying to scale up the reach that I've got. And so these group programs have been great. I'm realizing for a couple of reasons. Well, the boot camp is a 12-week program you go through with typically 10 to 12 guys total. And it is a group experience. And what you're getting is we do a few sessions on each of the elements of the masculine blueprint. And so from the book, they get the mental information. In the boot camp, we're doing practices and exercises and partner work to really drive it home more than just the written word can provide. And so guys, they start to see other men having similar problems, so they feel a little less alone. The work between the men is very very helpful and powerful in creating learning and understanding and transformation. And you get community with other men, which a lot of guys don't have. I mean, you know this, working with guys. Guys don't have friends. And so to do this in a community environment and start to build connections with other men that have depth is really powerful. So I've loved the boot camp, and the participants have really loved it as well. And we do really good work. So thanks for asking about that.
Yeah, I've been really surprised when we do these group things, how quickly most of the men are to just like spill it, right? Like it's for, you know, they wouldn't do that at a barbecue, but you get them in these environments and they're just like dude, that was almost like that borders on overshare, but that's awesome that you said that, right? And so that really gives men an opportunity to open up a little bit.
Totally. And it's an opportunity they just don't have in their regular life when they, like their neighbor buddy or the guy that's another dad on their kids' baseball team or whatever. They just don't have those opportunities. And I think that's why they immediately kind of let the floodgates open, because they just don't have it, but it's all building up there. So it's beautiful, these group experiences for allowing men those opportunities.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So just before we wrap up, can you give just one or two, like, hey, if you do nothing else today, this is what I would advise you to do?
Yeah, I would say start a daily practice. Embodiment, meditation, breath work. Even if it's a 5-minute practice, which is kind of anemic, but 5 minutes done consistently is way better than nothing done consistently. So that would be number one, and just really come back to yourself. You'll be amazed at what this changes when you do that religiously. So that's one. And number two, strive to know her better. So sometimes that means just be quiet when she's expressing. Not stoically, but just kind of try to receive her, even as if it sounds a little crazy and overly emotional. Like, use that to get to know her. And if she feels 5% more like heard, seen, understood, and felt by you, you're going to see her lighten up and open up immediately, even with just little changes in that, because the feminine really just craves to be known and felt. I think those are the two that I would give. I know those aren't simple, but those are the two that come for me.
No, I love it. And I was thinking about one of the actions that I had done. I actually did a everyday 3x5 postcard where I put things I love about you. And so I wrote those and I put them all over her bathroom. So it took up the whole bathroom, and then I made a book for her and all this stuff. But one of the exercises that I really enjoyed out of that is when, that's 365 individual things, right? Like I'm not going to repeat those. And so I had to know and really explore her in order to get that information and get to know her a little bit better.
Yeah. So love that. That's great.
Well, we know gsyoungblood.com, right? That's the main place. Where else can we find you?
Yeah, you can see examples on YouTube. Just search for my name, or Instagram, GS Youngblood, MIR, is another place to see little clips of different things that I talk about. Those are the best places. Yeah, we also, Kevin, I'll just do a shameless plug.
Go ahead.
I don't know when you'll release this episode, but if it's anytime in the next couple of weeks, we've got a workshop in the middle of October here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm super excited about that. The workshops are always just amazing experiences for the men.
Awesome. And they just go to gsyoungblood.com to find out.
Yeah.
Click on workshop
right there. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds great. I'll make sure I get that out. And I appreciate you taking the time, buddy.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right. See ya.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.